Hi everyone. Today I want to talk to you about my STEM career and how I have managed to create and build a career in STEM that works for me. Um, my journey with STEM, my experience with STEM has not been like a lot of people that I know. So a lot of people that go into sciences tend to go into labs. I haven't. And yeah, I hope it's an interesting little meandering story for you. And I hope that it inspires you to build a career, whether that's in STEM or not. But obviously, we are pro STEM here. But yeah, whether it's in STEM or not, that works completely for you, and you consider all of your, judgments, likes, dislikes, hobbies, all that kind of thing within that, because it's important and it is possible. It's just a little tricky sometimes. So if we start off, take you back to 1992. So this is little mini me. I was born in 92 in Middlesbrough, which is a very working class part of the northeast. I was surrounded by family that had not gone to uni, so I was the first person in my mum's side of the family to go to uni. My dad did go to uni, but he was the first in his family as well. So it wasn't something that was necessarily a given. My mum always made it so that it felt like a given that I would go to uni, but I didn't know anybody that had been to uni apart from my dad, and his experience was very different to mine because he went for art school. So yeah, my family all ran small businesses. My granddad was a butcher. My grandma had greengrocers. My uncles both had sort of painter, decorator, plumber jobs, like manual jobs. My mum owned her own PR agency when I was growing up, and now then when I was kind of a little bit older, she started to get into like online sales. So she had an eBay shop when eBay was still very new. Now she has an Etsy shop where she sells handmade greetings cards. So she's always been very creative. But the overarching thing was that everybody was entrepreneurial. We didn't have a huge amount of science in the family background at all. And now I would look back and say everyone was doing science in a different way, like in a more practical way. But there was no like history of academia or anything in our family at all. So it wasn't something that was naturally on my agenda. I always assumed that I would have a business of some kind growing up, but I didn't know what field that would be in, or what I would end up doing. So in 2001, we then moved as a family to Northumberland. And it was a much more middle class area of the northeast. We lived in a little town called Hexham, which is beautiful, lovely little market town. Lots of people have heard of Hexham because you tend to stop there for a nice coffee. There's always coffee and cake shops. And I had a really amazing time growing up there. I had this solid circle of friends. So you can see I went trick-or-treating my first Halloween in Northumberland. And these girls here were and still are my very close friends. So I did a lot of growing up with them. They were all at least a year older than me. Even this tiny little girl at the front, she was a year older than me. I was a head taller than her. But the overarching thing that came from that was that I was so secure in my hobbies, my interests, my likes and dislikes. I was really secure because none of my friends judged me for it. So I wasn't in a situation, at least outside of school, because none of these girls went to the same school as me either. We all just lived on the same street, so we would play out together, rollerblades and scooters and things. But all of those girls had their own particular interests, and so did I. So I wasn't in an environment where I was going to be bullied or laughed at for being a geek or anything like that. So I was pretty secure in the fact that I liked science. I thought it was cool. I was good at it. And yeah, I found it really interesting. And that was fine for me. And being surrounded by those friends and still being in contact with them now is really interesting because we've all gone on to do completely different things. One of them works in health and social care. One of them has their own business making kids clothes. Another one of them works for a greeting card design company. So we all do different things, and yet we all complement each other very well and support each other. So that network when I was growing up was hugely important, because I think if I hadn't have had that, I probably would have gone into something that was more, I don't want to say socially acceptable, because science is socially acceptable, but maybe less geeky or a bit cooler at school. Like I would have maybe pursued art or something. I didn't say earlier as well, my dad is a graphic designer, so I had him growing up as a sort of inspiration as to that side. And I worked in his studio when I was younger as well, so it was quite natural that I would have gone into owning my own business or taking on his business. And instead, I started to find science and think, this is kind of cool. Let's see what I can do with that. So then the big life changes happened, the big life decisions. So when I moved to Northumberland and things changed that way, that was really my mum and dad's decision. Like, we were moving as a family, and I was part of it, but it wasn't my thing. My thing was, am I going to go to uni? What uni am I going to go to, and what am I going to study? So 2008 was the year that I started my AS levels. So in England, I nearly said in the UK, and I hate that when people convolute them all together. But in England, when I was at school anyway, we had AS levels, which were sort of the first exams that you did before you could have gone to uni, I guess. And then we had full A levels. So you would do 4 subjects, at least in my school, 4 subjects for AS. So I did chemistry, biology, and maths, and history. And then you would drop one of them and continue the rest of your studies for the other 3. So I dropped history and did full A level for chemistry, biology, and maths. Because it was my initial kind of hunch and goal was, you like science, you like caring for people, you're kind of interested in the human body, medical school is the route for you. So I started to look at medical schools. I went to a few sort of student conferences about medical school and medical skills training and that kind of thing. And I was fully on board. Yeah, I'm going to medical school. It's just a matter of which one I'm going to and where that is, until I got my AS level results. Now, at the time, all of the medical schools really in the UK were asking for an A star and 2 A's at A level minimum. There were probably initiatives where you could maybe get lower grades and go, and it would be a kind of working class initiative, or trying to get people into uni that maybe wouldn't have gone otherwise, that kind of thing. But for me, it was an A star and 2 A's, and my AS level results were 2 B's and 2 C's. Now, one of the C's was in history, and I knew I was going to drop that anyway, so then I was left with 2 B's and a C, and I just could not see how I was going to make that into an A star and 2 A's in chemistry, biology, and maths, because I was really struggling with studying and with the exams and with the content that you had to take on, because it was such a jump from GCSE that my brain just couldn't really handle it. I wasn't learning the way that the teaching was happening in my school, so I felt like I was failing a lot of the time. So it was sort of it was a conscious decision once I got those results that I wasn't going to medical school, and that I should find something that fit my achievements and talents a bit more. So I ended up finishing my A levels, so full A levels, chemistry, biology, and maths, with 3 B's. And I decided that I was going to study pharmacology. So I'd done some sort of modules in biology when I was at school about drug interactions and how the body deals with drugs, how it metabolizes drugs, that kind of thing. And I figured that was interesting. That was the bit that I was really excited to learn about. And that was also the bit that I was good at in biology. I hated plant biology, I hated animal biology, but the stuff about humans and disease fit in with me, and it also fit in with the things that I'd liked about the prospect of going to medical school. And I found pharmacology as a degree option. I remember saying to my mum, I'm not going to medical school, I'm going to study pharmacology. She was like, right, that's a very niche, definitive answer you've got for yourself there. Why? And I explained it and stuff, and put through my university applications, and ended up with Newcastle Uni, which was my home uni, being my top choice. So that was half an hour, 45 minutes away from my mum and dad, and Aberdeen Uni as my second choice. and Aberdeen is where my best mate had gone to uni. So I was kind of okay either way. Like, I knew I was going to have a bit of home somewhere. And my grades that I finally got, as I said, were 3 Bs, and Newcastle wanted an A and 2 Bs. So I ended up in Aberdeen, which was fine. I was upset to begin with. But honestly, I've now been in Aberdeen for 10 years. And this is home for me now. You know, me and my partner have just bought a house. I've made fantastic friends. I love the research that I do. And yeah, Aberdeen is home. So as a slight sidetrack, if you don't get to go to the uni that you wanted to, you can still make it work. So Aberdeen was a new start for me. I hadn't, as I sort of mentioned before, I hadn't had the easiest time at school. When I was a teenager, I was finding it really, really difficult to live up to expectations. So I'd been really high performing at GCSE. I'd got, you know, A stars and A grades, and then I went to AS and A level, and suddenly everything was harder, and I couldn't do it, and my brain just wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. And I really thought, like, I've screwed everything up. I've been really cocky, and I'm not going to be able to do this. I also didn't have, I had friends, but I didn't have a really core group of people at my school that I was comfortable or really happy with. I had the girls that I mentioned at the beginning, where they lived in my street, and I saw them all the time, and I still have them as friends now, but I didn't have that community at school, and I wanted a fresh start. So Aberdeen was a huge fresh start for me. And it was somewhere that it felt, it was sort of escapist for me. So it was a completely new start in that I didn't know anybody apart from my best mate. So he only knew the good bits. He liked me. He, when I was meeting his friends, he was like, "Oh, I've got my best mate's coming. She's really cool." So I had a head start on having a social life, having a friendship group. And there was none of that baggage that I carried from school times, where I was meant to be good at stuff and then I wasn't. So all of that was a complete fresh start for me when I went to Aberdeen. And honestly, I flourished. I loved it. I loved my degree. I met some amazing people. I met this girl in the photograph next to me is my friend Lacey. So she lives in Seattle, and I met her when I did Camp America. So in the first summer of my undergrad, I took the summer and went to America for 9 weeks, and had a very strange time. That's a conversation for another day. But I met some incredible people, including Lacey, who is now one of my absolute best friends, and I've known her now for 9-10 years. And we've met up all around the world. Obviously, we don't live in the same country. She lives in Seattle, I live in Aberdeen. So if we're both planning holidays or trips, we try and get them to overlap so that we can see each other that way. So we've met in Barcelona, we've met in Mexico, we've met in New York. And she has been to my mum and dad's house when she was studying in London for a while. So I saw her then, and she came up north and had a proper Sunday roast with us, which was lovely. So I loved studenthood. I loved my degree. I liked the topic that we were studying, and I was good at it. The first year of my undergrad, I got first class grades in the end, for every exam in that first year. And after coming from an environment at school where that was never an option for me, that was massive. It was a huge confidence boost, and I was thinking, like, maybe I might be all right at this. Maybe science is something that I could do for a job. So I started to think, what do I do after this? What do I, what could I do? So I started to do different internships and things throughout my university years. One of which was a year-long industry placement. So in Aberdeen, and I know lots of other unis do it too, Aberdeen offered me the opportunity basically to take a year out. So after the third year of my degree, I took a year out, a full year, and I worked a 9 to 5 like a grown-up. And my internship experience was very different to a lot of the other people that did the same thing at the same time as I did. because many of them went into lab environments, because obviously we were doing pharmacology degrees or whatever else was in the sort of life sciences field for others. But I didn't want to do that. I knew that I didn't really want to work in a lab forever. So I wanted to explore different opportunities and different ways that I could work in science without being in a lab environment. So I took a year working for a recruitment company, which was weird. Definitely not something that I think the uni had anticipated happening as part of their industrial placement program, but it happened and it was great. I worked at a local recruitment company for a year, and I was hiring people to do clinical trials. So big contract clinical trials companies like Quintiles, Parexel, Roche, Pfizer, that kind of group of companies. I was the person that was finding research nurses to do studies for them. I was finding principal investigators for them on contracts. And it was a bit mad because at the time I think I was like 19 or something. No, I was maybe 20 or 21. And I was hiring principal investigators that were getting paid £1,500 a day to do this job. And I was sat there in my little office in Aberdeen at the top of one of the Union Square buildings, top of one of the Union Street buildings rather, you know, trying to scrape enough money together to get prep for lunch that was over the road. So it was a very strange time, but one of the things that I really enjoyed was the way that clinical trials were designed. So whenever I spoke to someone, I was really interested in the way that the thought process about how they would do this clinical trial to make evidence. How do you make evidence? That was all really interesting to me. So my main plan after graduating, so after this industrial year, I then went back to uni for a year to finish the degree off. And my main aim of what to do after this was just, please don't make me live in a student flat anymore. Other things kind of could give or take, but I could not be living in a student flat again after what was then 5 years of it, because it was just too much. Anybody who has lived in a student flat will know this. It's a very specific time of your life that you do once get over and then try and avoid. So that was my goal. Don't live in a student flat, find something sciencey, probably related to clinical trials that I liked, figure it out as that last year went on. So in my last year, a lot of people started to do, started to search for PhDs. So PhDs are often very, very difficult to get, to secure funding for primarily. Often a researcher will say that they'll take you on and you can work in their lab, or they're, you know, in their team as a PhD student, but they won't have funding for you. So you might need to find that funding yourself. So I started this quest to find a PhD, and I was incredibly lucky. So at this point I had, so this was 2014, late 2014, and I had a boyfriend that I'd been with for 2 years. We lived together. He had a job. He graduated the year before me. He's a year older, and I don't let him forget it. He had a job that was really well paying. He really enjoyed. He had good networks, good friends, and we lived together. So I was thinking, right, if I move from Aberdeen, do I just throw that away? Like, what happens? So, you know, we had one of those big life conversations where I was like, what am I going to do? I think I want to do a PhD, but I don't know where I'm going to do it. And the likelihood of it being in Aberdeen is so slim. So I'm not really sure what to do. And we had this conversation, and basically we agreed that I would do my best to find something in Aberdeen. And if the right thing was not in Aberdeen, I would move and we would just, you know, do the whole long distance thing. Lots of academics do it. Lots of academics are forced to do it because of the way that niches are spread. Usually, if you're in a particular research niche, there's only a very limited number of groups that you can work in to really do your best work and have opportunities. So I found 2 PhDs. One was in Belfast and one was in Aberdeen. So I applied for the Belfast one because the deadline was first, and I got shortlisted, and then I got a call to say that all of the funding had been pulled and there was now no PhD. And I was like, okay, so I have one chance. And I found this PhD in Aberdeen, and it was honestly my dream PhD. It was a project that had enough flexibility to allow me to explore stuff, but enough guidance to give me a bit of confidence as I went through and, you know, learning what research was and how to do it. And the PhD itself was all about clinical trials and how people are recruited into them. So when I'd done that year in industry, I had encountered lots of times when there wasn't enough participants in trials, and I didn't understand why I was, you know, working really hard to get staff for trials, and yet I couldn't. You know, when they went to work, there wasn't enough work for them to be doing because there was not enough participants. So this PhD was basically helping to solve that problem. How do you recruit people into trials? And if you're failing to recruit, what do you do? That kind of thing. So I had, that was basically my only punt. And I thought, I'll try that. And if that doesn't work, I'll not do a PhD, I'll go and get a job in some sort of trials industry. Because trials methods, PhDs are few and far between. So I had this one in Aberdeen. I went for the interview at the beginning of December 2014. And it was one of the best interviews I'd ever had. I loved the people that were interviewing me. I thought they were really cool. They were funny. They just felt like these would be good people to work with. So I did the interview. I went back to my degree, you know, carried on working. And later that day, I got an email to say that I was going to be offered the PhD, but it was one of the people that had interviewed me, my now or my then PhD supervisor. He'd emailed to just say, you'll get an official offer, but we just wanted to stop you from getting to the point where you check your email every 5 seconds to see if you've got an offer or not. You are getting the offer, it's coming, we would love to work with you. And then I had all of these thoughts of, oh God, what am I doing? I'm signing up for this PhD that is 3 years. It was a funded PhD, which was good. It came with funding so that I didn't have fees to pay, and it also came with a stipend, which is basically a tax-free amount of money that you're given every month to help you live. But it wasn't very much. It wasn't as much as working like a 9-to-5 job would have paid me. And the important thing to me was that it wasn't as much as any of my friends were getting paid. So it felt a little bit like I was choosing not to grow up a little bit. So if I went into studenthood 2.0, I was then going to, you know, say, right, look, I'm going to continue student life for another 3 years. And I'd already done it for 5 when lots of my friends in England at English unis had been doing it for 3 and graduated. So my, as I said earlier, my one thing was I cannot live in a student flat again. So if I can do this PhD and not live in a student flat, maybe that's an option. And I did. So myself and my partner moved into a really tiny, tiny, tiny flat. I think it had like 4 rooms and they were all small. But it was ours. It wasn't lots of students living together. It was us two. And I thought, yeah, okay, I can probably do this. It's 3 years, I can do this. So I went on to doing the PhD. And it was honestly absolutely amazing. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had. The people that I worked with were incredible. I was working within a team that was really inspiring and bouncy and fun and enthusiastic, and they were happy for me to explore stuff and figure stuff out, and they were encouraging. So I published my first paper in the middle of my first year of my PhD. No, that's a lie. Middle of my second year of my PhD. And that was my first author paper. So I was, it was Gardner et al. In the second year of my PhD, which was really cool. I was encouraged to explore different things. So I did lots of science communication. This picture here is me at Soapbox Science, which is a women-only science event where basically you sort of stand in the middle of the street and talk to passers-by. So I did the Edinburgh version in 2017, talking about trials with people in the rain. I loved it so much that I brought it to Aberdeen. So I now lead the Aberdeen version. And I got to travel for conferences. I did so much cool stuff. So I went to Portland in the US, in Oregon, to present my work at a conference. I went to South Africa to present my work at a conference, and I was having an amazing time, a really amazing time. And I felt like I'd found my people. So this picture of the three of us it's me and my two PhD supervisors. So the guy in blue is Professor Sean Treweek, and the lady next to me is Dr. Katie Gillies, and they were incredible PhD supervisors, to the point where I'd said when I finished the PhD, I'm not leaving. So if you can't find any money to work, to help me work, if you can't pay me, I will stay in the staff kitchen. I'll just make tea because I just really like you. They did find money for me because I think they were just like, oh God, maybe she's serious. She is probably just going to stand in the staff kitchen and make tea for people. And they accepted me. They seemed enthused by the things that I was enthused by. They didn't mind that my mum had made my childhood teddy bear a PhD gown and cap for when I graduated. And they didn't mind being photographed with that bear. His name's Tatty, by the way, and he was also in my undergrad official photos. The photo on the other side is with a group of early career researchers when we got the chance to go to Buckingham Palace. Wild. So in the research unit that I work in, which is the Health Services Research Unit at the University of Aberdeen, we were awarded the Queen's Award in partnership with our sister unit, which is the Health Economics Research Unit. So HSRU, us, HERU, them, got the Queen's Award together, and we were invited to, a very, very small group of us were invited to Buckingham Palace to go and collect the award. And I was one of them that got to go, and it was just insane. Like, it really was insane. So we flew down the night before, sorted everything out. Everyone had like, iron your dress, sort things out, make sure that you've like got your hair cut and done your nails and that kind of thing. And then the next day we went to Buckingham Palace, where our unit director met with Charles and Camilla. Camilla came over and started talking to me, said she liked my dress. And it was incredible. It was a very surreal experience, because we all then like sorted ourselves out and went back to Aberdeen as if it was a normal thing to do, to go to Buckingham Palace. And I've still got the Buckingham Palace invitation with like the wax seal and things. So it was even to the point where me and my friend Beatrice, who is another early career researcher at the unit, who's in that photograph, we went to the toilet just because we wanted to go to the bathroom in Buckingham Palace to see what it looked like. It was a toilet. They had lovely printed toilet roll, but it was still a toilet. But yeah, I felt like I'd found my people. I'd found a group of academics and researchers that understood me and encouraged me in all of the things that I wanted to look at and explore. So I stayed there. After my PhD had finished, I said to my supervisors, I'm not leaving. So I did stay. I got a 6-month contract after my PhD finished. I got project funding from the Scottish Government for a project that I'm now working on. It now employs me, which was led by Professor Sean Treweek. And he was my PhD supervisor. He's now my boss. So like we work really well together. I won an award. So I won the Principal's Award for Public Engagement. This is myself, and then Beatrice, who you'll notice from the last picture, is on my right, and then Heather Morgan, who is an absolute powerhouse and wonderful, wonderful human to work with, on my left. And everything was going really well, but I just felt like something was missing. Something didn't feel full. I didn't feel like I was doing the career that I wanted to do. So this is my dog. So this year, I went into this year not in a great state. And the last couple of years have been hard. Like it's doing a PhD is one thing, but learning about the process of being an academic is tough. And I was making some really new to me discoveries about how resilient I was going to have to be to succeed in academia. And that was stuff like, am I going to be able to get grants forever? Am I going to be able to find money continually throughout my career to sustain me? Because in academia, until you get to basically a professorship, in the UK at least, you tend to be employed on a contract basis, and sometimes those contracts are 6 months, sometimes they were a year. I was lucky in that the one that I'm on now was 25 months, and that was, people have been astounded by how long that is for a first big contract. I didn't really know if academia was going to be for me for that reason. Should I go into science communication? Oh God, what am I going to do? Growing up is hard. So I started off with all these different ideas coming at me, and what do I do? What should I do? And it was tough, and my dog really helped, which is why you've got a picture of him there. He's called Barney, and I love him. So I decided from that point to work to infuse creativity with what I was doing. And that was very conscious, because when I was doing science communication, either face-to-face or online, I tried to do it creatively. I was a creative person. I am a creative person. That background that I'd had from my dad having a graphic design business, my mum being creative, it was still in me. I just wasn't doing it. So I managed to bag myself a very, very lucky 3-month travel fellowship from the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust. And this was a photograph that I posted on Instagram the day that I went for the interview. So the statue of Churchill is really close to the place where the Churchill Memorial Trust is based. So I took a picture and just had the emoji of fingers crossed. So you can see Soph Talk Science liked it, which is funny now that we're in this situation giving talks. And I got it, and I couldn't believe it. My topic for this travel fellowship was looking at how scientists can talk about their work creatively online, specifically in things like blogs and microblogs, so Twitter, Instagram, that kind of thing. And my trip included, this will be a long one. So I started off the trip in Quebec. My partner came out for the first couple of weeks with me, where we had like a holiday at the beginning, because it was over New Year and it was all snowy and lovely. So we did Quebec, and then we went to Toronto. And then he left when we had a few days in Toronto, and then he left and went home, and I had the rest of the trip. So from Toronto, I then did New York, New Hampshire, and Washington, DC. Then I came home, and I was home for about 2 days. And then I went to Berlin in Germany for a weekend when I took my mum with me. So that was fun. And I was exploring some stuff over there. And then I came back again for about 2 days, and then went to Singapore and then Hong Kong. Incredible opportunity, incredible funding pot. It's not an academic funding pot, so just as a small plug for the Churchill Memorial Trust, please go and check them out. It's open to anybody over the age of 18, as long as you have a passion project and it involves travel. It's an amazing initiative that was really helpful for me at that time in my life when I wasn't sure what I was going to do, and I thought, should I be doing science communication? Should I be doing creative science communication for a life? And I wasn't sure. So I did that trip. It reinforced to me that academia isn't everything, because this was not an academic journey. It was, meeting people in coffee shops all over the world and having chats with them, going to museums that I'd seen online for years and would have loved to have gone to, finally going to them and experiencing them firsthand. And it helped me find my niche and evaluate what I wanted to do in STEM, what the overarching goal was, and therefore what needed to fit into those, what needed to fit into my job to make that overarching goal a success. So what am I doing now? I've hinted at it a few times, but what am I doing now? I have 2 streams to my life. I've got my own business. So as I mentioned, my mum, dad, uncles, grandparents all had their own businesses growing up. So to me, having my own business, absolutely a normal thing. That wasn't the bit that was weird. Having a 9-to-5 in science was weird. So I have my own business called Science on a Postcard, which I will talk about later on. And I work full-time as well as a research fellow at the Health Services Research Unit, which is where I did my PhD and where I refused to leave from. So I've kept my word and I'm still there. So my business, this is one of the weird things that people often are just like, what are you doing? Because you academics don't have businesses. Spoiler alert, loads of them do. They just might not talk about it. So my business is, for me, a creative outlet. When I was finding my niche in that, Americanized journey type talk, but when I was on that Churchill Fellowship trip, I had so much thinking time of what I wanted to do, that the overarching things were I wanted to spark conversations, I wanted to break down stereotypes, because people told me that I didn't look like a scientist, and it was enraging and frustrating. And I wanted to have some handle on diversity, so demonstrating the diversity in science that is already here, and working to encourage that diversity in the coming years. So the business for me has been a mental health absolute heaven. It's been amazing. So I design and create enamel products, so pin badges that you can see on the screen, earrings, key rings, tote bags, screen printed tote bags, postcards, a ton of different products that all have something at their core, which means that they are fun, vibrant, colourful, and not like an old science textbook that you might have seen. So the whole ethos of the product and the business is to demonstrate that scientists are not all Einstein. We don't look like him, we don't study the same thing, we're different. And the scientific community is much more than the old white men that you may have seen in textbooks as you grow up. And the business has also given me incredible networking opportunities. So not only has it benefited the business in that the business has grown in the 3 years since I started it, but it's benefited my research, because the business has more followers than I do on Twitter, for example. So people might find me through there, find out what I do in the trial space, and then work with me that way. And the skills that you learn as a small business owner feed into that academic life. So I need to have a handle on money and budget. I pay tax. We're coming up to potentially becoming VAT registered. There's all of this administrative stuff that comes into being an academic that is really, really helpful. So project management now, easy, when you've had to deal with suppliers from all over the world not arriving on time and not having Christmas products when it's Christmas, that kind of thing. You can deal with an academic system that is often slower than the rest of the world. So Cool Things Business Edition, I worked with TechFest this year to create their festival program cover. Now that for me was one of the most insane conversations to ever have with someone. For someone to say, can you design our festival program cover? I was just like, what are you talking about? I'm not a real designer, I'm a scientist. I know I have this design-based business, but I didn't, honestly, before that I didn't feel validated as a designer, but now I've done it, I've designed it, I must be a designer, right? I've had amazing product collaborations with initiatives like the Global Science Show, which is an online Twitter-based virtual science festival that happens once a month. I've created products where a percentage of the proceeds go to charity. And all of that has been incredible. I've worked on custom design projects to give people products that only they have in the world, and they've paid me for it. They've paid me money to doodle and put it on a product. Like, that is just mind-blowing to me. So all of those things for me are very quick wins. They're things that I get a brief for, I do the work, I invoice, the product goes out, full circle, job done. And often that full circle job done can happen within a week, couple of weeks. Academia is not like that. Academia is a slow burn. So having this alongside my research career gives me those little wins that keep me ticking over and keep me getting those little serotonin boosts of happiness and a sense of achievement until that research sense of achievement comes in later down the line. My research is a curiosity outlet for me. It's not a creative outlet necessarily, although sometimes it is creative, but in different ways. It's a curiosity outlet. So it's a space where I ask questions all the time. And no one tells me to shut up. No one tells me that I'm asking stupid questions. People just say, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, maybe we should find out. Let's design something to answer that question. So all of my research has been on clinical trial efficiency. At the moment, I'm working on a project looking at the outcomes that we collect in clinical trials and how people think them through, how we come up with those outcomes. And recently I've worked on a really rewarding and brilliant project on inclusivity in clinical trials. So this was based on COVID-related funding around how Black and minority ethnic groups are suffering disproportionately from COVID. So we were looking at developing a framework for trialists to use to make sure that their trials are inclusive, that they're not accidentally putting something in the written language or any other part of the trial that would make certain cultures feel uncomfortable or unwanted or closed off from the trial. So that to me was one of the coolest projects I've ever done, and one that I'll be building on in the coming years, hopefully with regards to ethnicity, class, different groups of people, like around gender identities and sexualities and things, just trying to make trials as open as they possibly can be. And again, I'm working with people that accept, inspire, and encourage me every day, and it's amazing. The team that I work with are genuinely some of the coolest people that I've ever met. Like, my professor, absolutely brilliant, such good fun to work with, and understands that the way that I work. So sometimes I work really well after I've had an afternoon nap, which is great when you're working from home. Not so much when you're working in the office, but when you're working from home, an afternoon nap is great. And he leaves me to it. He leaves me with a level of independence that means that I can go to him if I need him. And if I don't, and I just want to get on with stuff myself in my own schedule, he's more than happy for that to happen. So last thing, cool things, research edition. This year, in 2020, I've published 5 papers. Some of those are first author papers, like the one that you can see on the screen. That was a systematic review from my PhD work, and that was like 3 years worth of work. So it was incredible to see that published this year, and it's an open access journal, so that if you want to go and read it, you can. It's free. There's no paywall. As I mentioned earlier, I worked on that project that had COVID-related funding around inclusivity, and that really pushed me and helped me to find a niche that I care about and that ties in with the business, and that means that literally everything I do with the business does feed in positively with my research work, and vice versa. So that niche and specialism area is something that I'm really grateful to have found this year. And my colleagues are encouraging that, which is lovely. So for the next couple of years, we'll be putting in grants to keep me funded, but some of those grants might include a 4-day week rather than a 5-day week, so I've got 1 day freed up for the business and work that might come with the business. And of course, everyone's highlight of 2020 in this hellfire of a year, working in my pajamas. So this year we left the university building at the end of March, and we haven't been back since, obviously. But I've loved working from home. I'm very, very lucky and very conscious of the privilege that I have in that I don't have kids, so I don't have to juggle childcare, teaching, and work. My partner's working from home with me, and we share an office, which is really nice. It means that we can, break for lunch at the same time, go for a walk, take the dog out, that kind of thing. It also means that I can have my beloved afternoon naps if and when needed, which is good. And it's really helped my mental health, because I have depression, so juggling all of these things is sometimes really difficult. But this year it's actually been easier to handle because I can set my own schedule, truly. I don't have to be in the office. It's not noted if I'm not in the office, because no one's in the office. It's, this year has actually been very, very good research-wise. For all of those reasons, I found that I've been much more productive than I have in past years. So that's it. A long and windy road to academia and everything else. Happy to answer any questions.